Let's bring in Hollywood divorce attorney David Glass for more on this. David.
People going through divorces are going through some of the hardest times of their lives, and a lot of what they're going through is emotional. And in any divorce, there's a huge sense of loss, and loss of relationship, of money, some friends.
Hi, I'm David Glass, and welcome to the Hourglass Podcast. We have a very dynamic guest on the show today, Serrano Lopez. She's going to talk to us about all things marriage. Anne is the former wife of legendary comedian George Lopez and has been a producer, actress, and dancer. She's appeared on Curb Your Enthusiasm, Punk'd, as well as a long list of shows. She also has been the energetic producer behind several of her former husband's comedy specials, including George Lopez, Tall, Dark, and Chicano, George Lopez, America's Mexican, and she was also producer on Mr. Trooper. Now, this couple was married for 18 years and share a daughter, Mayan, who's now 28 years old. Now, Mayan stars with her father in Lopez v. Lopez, which was just renewed for another season on NBC. As I understand it, Anne and her former husband have a positive relationship. They work together well in nurturing their daughter. I can't wait to have her share how she has kept her relationship civil and positive since their divorce in 2011. 12 years ago. Welcome, Anne. As you know, our audience is comprised of those going through the divorce or breakup process, and they need advice from all sorts of people on how to get through it in a classier, a more civil way. Yeah. So I have a number of questions I would like to ask you, and first of all, I consider it an honor to have you on the show today.
Gosh, thank you. No, I consider it an honor to be here.
Yeah, thanks.
People navigate this very emotional and difficult journey. It's hard.
Sure. So first, can you tell us about your marriage? And after 18 years, what prompted the two of you to quote uncouple?
Well, we had what I thought was a good marriage. We met during a casting for a movie. It was my first casting job. We clicked on having Latinos have positive roles in television. I'm Cuban, the first one in my family born in the United States. So we had a lot of things in common, and we were a great team with a family and a business. And but then about 6 years in, he misbehaved, and we had to reassess. And my daughter was 3, and I definitely wanted her to have her father in her life. And we went to couples therapy, and he went to individual therapy, and he took it very seriously. Right. And he became a better man, and that was great. And I told him at that time, if it ever happened again, finito. Right. So it did happen again, and it was pretty public. It was in a tabloid. That's how I found out. Yeah. It was a pretty devastating way to find out that, your husband's leading a double life, basically. So I just made the decision that was just not something I could tolerate. Right. And decided to divorce him. So that's that.
Right. So that was obviously a very hard way to find out about it.
Yeah, it was a very hard way. And, it was interesting because I think the nail that, in our marriage was Lopez Tonight, that television show, his talk show. He just got a really big head. I mean, my daughter was like 12, 13, and she would say, "When's Mr. Limelight coming home?" Right. When your child says that, you're like, okay, and all of a sudden it's all about them, which it was a lot in the marriage anyway, but he kind of pulled away from the family man, and that was really hard. That was really hard.
Sure. It's I mean, it's unfortunately it's relatively common in actors and producers, and it takes a certain type of person to get out there. Yes. And to act and to host a show and to do all those things. The downside of that is that sort of self-centeredness and I can do anything and I'm a very important person affects their relationships.
Yeah, I mean, we were very much a team, and I remember one day I was giving him some advice and he said, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about." And I thought, okay, because we were really a team. And I thought, okay, that's very unusual. He had never done that to me before.
Yeah.
So there are signs, that I think my therapist says that I should open a paint store because I painted so many red flags white.
Right. Right.
Sometimes you just don't want to see it, you don't want to see it. So you kind of just brush it away like, okay, la, 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 la. I'm not looking at this,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that, you have to confront what's in front of you. And that's not always easy.
Sure. And then jumping ahead a little bit, after your breakup, did you remain in therapy and did you work on that tendency for you to either ignore or paint red
Funny,
flags?
I had therapy this morning. I mean,
Okay.
I'm like, are you kidding me? I've been in therapy since the divorce. Yes, 12 years ago. So yeah. And I think I had a very codependent relationship with George. In my family, I was kind of the misfix-it. And so whether this was a true or not, I perceived helping as getting love.
Right.
So I had to kind of break that cycle in myself. So one of the things in a divorce is, especially if you're the one that's been, cheated on, or, you're the I hate to use the word victim because no one's really a victim, but if you're the one that's been, hurt, is to blame the other person for everything. And I think I had to look at my own patterns of behavior and my own even from my childhood, and say, oh, this is why I even picked him.
Right.
Because of all these things. And so that's what I've worked on, is myself, and having a more, I used to think selfish was a really ugly word. And it's not necessarily, you have to think of yourself too. I was always giving, giving, giving.
Absolutely. I mean, after I got divorced 15 years ago, it would have been very easy for me to, I'll give you the top 10 things my ex did wrong.
Right.
But it took me about a year of therapy to figure out how I contributed to that, how I sought that out, what I did to encourage my ex to do that.
Yes.
And it was only going through that therapy that I became a better person and made myself a better future partner to the woman I ultimately met. So I think it's something everyone should do. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't take my advice after they get there.
Well, therapy is really, really important. I read, my therapist had a lot of books on narcissism that I read that helped me understand more his behavior. I went to Al-Anon. At the time, George was really not even acknowledging that he had a drinking problem. So it's really hard to deal with someone or forgive someone when they're not even acknowledging that there is a problem. And in Al-Anon, they really help you realize that it's not about you and you have no control over that situation.
Yeah.
You have to really let them go with God. It's like, it's their journey. It's not, and me being a misfix-it, I was always trying to fix the problem, but it's really a problem I can't fix. He had to. I also joined a writing class, which was this class, it was really cool. It was like, write where you are. So they give you a prompt and then you would just start writing.
Yeah.
And it just helped me. It wasn't even necessarily things about the divorce, but it just gave me an outlet to open up my feelings. I went back to an acting class, which I had not been to, and I hadn't been to an acting class in years. And I was the oldest one in the class, but it was great to have this place to also, take out some frustrations, take out some feelings, to do something creative that I used to do that I had, gone away from for many, many years. So it was going back to something. So I would say for women, find something that fulfills you, something that fulfills you. It can be a ceramics class. It can be just reading an hour a day. It can be anything, but you need something, because especially if you have children, this is a really you have to think of them first.
Right.
You have to think of them first. And so a lot of it is, for me especially, there were a lot of things I could have said in the press. There were a lot of things my ex-husband was saying about me that were not true. Somehow it got out that he divorced me when I divorced him, which was a very weird dynamic, because I don't know whether it was his camp that did it. I don't know whether it was just a better story, but I think that it made him look very bad.
Right.
But for some reason that didn't bother him. I think he didn't want it, like, I don't know, he didn't want me to divorce him, So you have to be very careful with the ego. Like, I could have gone out and said, oh no, I divorced him. But you have to say, you may want to blow it up, but
Right.
you're not going to get necessarily what you want. And I think for women, you really need to take control of your divorce. This is not something that's happening to you.
Right.
Take control. Take control of the finances, take control of the children, take control of, this is your time to really think about what you want and go out and get it. I had a really great divorce lawyer that allowed me also. I was sometimes writing the letters, and because I'm a good writer, and she would fluff them in legalese and then send them. But you have to, because everybody wants their day in court, but you have to think about, is that day in court going to serve you? Emotionally, financially, your child. There's a lot of things I could have said, but am I going to do that to my daughter? No. You have to really think of the bottom line and the end result. And that's very difficult when you're going through this
Sure, absolutely.
really emotional time.
Yeah, and it's that decision of, how public am I going to make this? How hot am I going to make the fire? How much am I going to blow this up? Which is, a strong feeling when you're getting divorced, especially if you were the person who was wronged in some way.
Yeah.
But it's the question of, how much is this going to cost down the road to get this little bit of satisfaction. In your case, everyone should know that I'm the one who for the divorce. But what is that tension going to do down the road?
You always have to maintain contact with wisdom.
Right.
Maintain contact with wisdom. And you have to really take yourself out of that emotional, vindictive place, and really think about what you said, what's going to benefit you down the line. And for me, it helped me to really think about, I'll be really honest with you, it was kind of simple, but I thought about karma. I was like, I don't have to punish him. Karma's a bitch, and she'll take care of him. She'll take care of what needs to be taken care of. I need to take care of myself. I need to take care of mostly my child.
Yeah.
And for me, that was the most important thing.
Sure. Now, when you had tough days as you were going through the divorce process, and there are a lot of them during that divorce process, how did you handle them? Like, what were your top 3 go-tos to try and lift your own spirits? People, they talk about movies and music or watching comedy specials, or what were the things that you always turned to make yourself feel better?
I really turned to my daughter was riding horses at the time. So even if she was at school, I'd go to the barn and just kind of walk around the barn. I love horses. And so I'd be in nature and kind of pet them. They're very empathetic creatures, the horse and my dogs, and just writing in a journal. That was a really, really, really big part. And just bitching to my girlfriends, honey. Yeah. They really supported me. Just bitching to the girlfriends. That's, you really have to have a support group around you that is going to protect you and listen when you're saying the same thing 50 times, but you need to get it through your head, those women, to have your tribe of friends and your tribe of women that are there for you is so very important. So I think that's where my go-tos.
And having a big group is certainly helpful if you have that many friends, because there's no one person who can take all that venting from you.
Right. And what's the interesting thing now is, I'm very close to a lot of ladies in my neighborhood, and I was kind of the first one that got a divorce. And now a bunch of them are getting divorces. And so I can impart my wisdom to them. So it's almost, also giving it back, paying it forward, playing it forward is, now I can, they call me, they're like, okay, this is happening. I'm like, okay.
Right, with the wisdom and distance from your own experience.
Yeah, because you have to have distance. When you're in, it's really funny. One of the other things my therapist told me is your hurt is it's like a funnel. So in the beginning, or a little tornado, in the beginning, it keeps hitting that point. And as you go on, it hits it, but it goes further and further. And so there's more time. So it's always going to hurt, but as you go on, there's more time in between.
Yeah.
Where where that hurt is those feelings are gonna come up.
Sure. I like to say that divorce is a second chance at happiness. That's partly as my job as a divorce lawyer, to tell people there's something coming that's going to be good after this.
Yeah.
Did you find that divorce ultimately led to more happiness in your life?
Yeah, because we had a very chaotic life. When you are a celebrity, your biggest commodity is time.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember we would have to, like, when we would take our daughter to Disneyland, we had to have 3 guards with us.
Right.
So my life became much more simple. I didn't have to deal with, I was very involved in his business. So that was a little bit of a hard thing to give up.
Mm-hmm.
And I started producing things on my own, but all that stuff that happens with celebrity it's very taxing. And so I became, I could just kind of breathe and be a normal person for the first time in 20 years. So that was nice. That was nice.
Absolutely. Now turning towards your daughter, she was about 15 years old when you got divorced, right?
14 and 15, yeah.
And then how did she manage the difficult transition? How did it impact her life, and what were you able to do to try and make it easy for her? Because a 15-year-old girl, I have older daughters, almost the same age as your daughter now, but they're sometimes tough to deal with. So tell me about that process.
I think that was a really, really horrible age for her to have to go through that. And in some regards, she's still going through it because, her dad's a little difficult. But, I think one of the things because I had her in therapy, one of the things her therapist told me was, you need to tell her the truth always. One parent has to tell the truth.
Right.
And sometimes it was very, very difficult, but I had to tell her the truth. Another really, really hard thing as a mother was, you have to let your child see their parent for who they are. You can't sugarcoat it. There were times where most of the time he wouldn't see her for like 6 weeks.
Wow.
A 2-hour, I had told him, look, because he had a talk show and then he was doing stand-up on the weekends. So I was like, look, you're always home Sunday night. Have a standing dinner with her every Sunday night. I think because I said it, he didn't do it.
Right.
He would see her, once every 6 weeks. And it was like, how do you can't make that okay for a child.
Yeah.
So part of it is they have to adjust to the new reality. And it's so painful as a parent to see them, crushed like that. But in the long run, it's better for them to understand who that parent is,
Yeah,
than to try to sugarcoat it and try to present them in a different light. She got very, very depressed. I read her diary and she was talking about suicide.
wow.
And I took that very seriously. And I ended up sending her to a therapeutic boarding school that she says saved her life.
Yeah.
And it was a really, really hard decision. But I knew that for her, ultimately, I needed her to be in a safe place where I knew she was getting help
Yeah.
and where she could process that. And the good thing was that the school kind of forced George to have therapy with her once a week.
Sure.
So something that he probably wouldn't have done, like because it was a school and because it would have made him look bad if he didn't do it.
Right.
So it became a really, really, really great thing. But I did everything I possibly could. But there's still, but there's not, look, you can't solve normal. You can't solve this. This is what it is. I mean, this is, it's their new normal. And you have to just support them the best you can and just say, I'm so sorry you're going through this.
Yeah.
But it is the reality, but whatever you do, don't sugarcoat it. Don't make them look better than they are. And that's really hard. That's really hard.
Right. And that's ultimately good advice for anyone who has a child who is estranged from the other parent. If you're trying to sugarcoat it, first of all, it seems like your child's going to know that you're sugarcoating it. They can
Yes.
see what's
Oh,
going
they're
on.
so smart. They know everything.
Yeah, and so at least being honest with them and upfront and maintaining your closeness with them,
Yes.
I think gives them the strength to get through that.
Also, let them be where they are in their feelings.
Yeah.
I think a lot of parents try to manage their kids' emotions, and you if they are, there were days I said, don't go to school.
Right.
Don't go to school. You know what? We're having a mental health day.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to be in your bed all day, or let's go to the zoo, or let's go here, or let's go there, let's go to Disneyland, whatever. Let's just do something, but don't go to school. So you have to really meet them at where they are.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where she didn't want to talk to her dad, and okay, don't talk to your dad.
Mm-hmm.
That's their that's another thing with divorce. It becomes their relationship. It's no longer a family relationship necessarily. It becomes their relationship with their father, and you have to respect that. I always, wanted her to have a relationship with George.
Sure.
One of the first things also my therapist said is, because he wouldn't co-parent, and it was like, to co-parent, you first have to be a parent.
Right.
He wasn't being a parent at the time, so I had to really change my expectations of what, I'd seen a couple of my friends that, oh my God, they co-parent so well. And, they were this, and that was not my experience at all. And, and how they say, don't say anything bad about the other parent. But if they're being, if my daughter comes to me and says, hey mom, he's being a dick, I'm going to say, you know what? Absolutely. He's being a dick. I'm so sorry. He's being a dick.
Right.
And you can't just say, oh, honey, you have to really validate their feelings.
Yeah. And the difference between those two is you're not spontaneously telling your daughter, here are the top 10 things your dad does wrong and keeps doing wrong, as opposed to she's coming to you with a real life example.
Yes.
And again, to sugarcoat it or ignore it isn't going to help her.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, yeah, it's a hard thing. She's still dealing with it. That's what their show is about.
Sure.
That is what their show is about, is this estrangement and this, it's a fictionalized version of it. Mm-hmm. But, even to the point where my daughter has gotten jealous. She calls her character Schmayan, sitcom Mayan. And she's gotten jealous of her character because her character is having conversations with her dad character that she wants to have in real life, and he won't have them.
Right.
Or like Christmas. We had not had Christmas as a family together for 11 years.
Yeah.
And then on TV, she gets her parents together for Christmas. Right. And so then we finally had Christmas together Christmas Day for a few hours. Right. And then this year, I thought we were going to do the same thing for her, and he had some shenanigans, and it didn't happen. But you know, for me, I always tell my daughter, I will do whatever you want.
Mhm.
If you want us to have Christmas together, I'll have Christmas together. If you don't, he was every year he was invited to Christmas.
Right,
He
right.
never came, but I always extended the invitation,
Mhm.
because I wanted him to be in her life.
Sure. It's a tough thing, figuring out holidays and how often to be together
Yeah.
after you're separated.
Yeah.
But what you said earlier, you have to follow your child's lead. Some kids, my daughters didn't want us all in the same place. They said, I like going to mom's house. I like coming to your house. I like mom's new partner. I like your new partner, but having us all together is not going to feel good. And then I sort of said, that's fine. I'll follow your lead on that for sure. But yeah, and each family is completely different.
Yeah, it's completely different. He didn't talk to me for 10 years. So that was really difficult because it put her in the middle of a lot of
Yeah.
stuff, her telling me things and I being, well, I don't know. So the pandemic was really what brought us kind of back together.
Oh,
He
that's
is immune compromised, because of the kidney transplant.
great.
And so even though he had people to, bring him food or whatever, we would bring him food and we started, so we started talking and we started kind of being there. And then he was having a birthday and he wanted us there and wanted us there at a certain time because he was having a drive-by with people and a mariachi band. And we got there at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I had forgotten how famous he was. There were cakes and balloons and all this. And we went to Target and got like these little balloons. I was like, oh, these are not, he was like, no, I like those. I like those. Because he had fancy
Right.
stuff. And this is another, because I know you were going to ask about the etiquette of going over to someone else's house.
Sure,
It
sure.
was really funny because I had not been in that situation. I kind of went a little bit back into wife mode, and there were all these cakes, and I'm going through his refrigerator and trying to, rearrange so all these things would fit. And he's like, hey, ask first. And all of a sudden I thought of myself, he's right. This is
Right.
not my house. I need to ask. I need to respect his space. But it's almost like muscle memory. You just go back into that role,
Yeah.
and so it was interesting. It was interesting. And my daughter started doing these TikToks, my divorced parents acting like they're still married. Because we'd be bickering, or I'd go to try to squeeze a zit on her. Like, we didn't even know she was filming us. And he'd be like,
Right.
get away from me, don't squeeze my zit. So she put it on TikTok and it kind of blew up. It was pretty funny.
Yeah. But it's amazing the way you can fall back into those same roles. The way
Oh,
in your family
absolutely.
you kept everything organized and orderly and in
Yeah,
place.
especially being a misfix-it,
Yeah.
it's I really had to and I'm a very type A person, so I've really had to not my monkey, not my circus. I don't have to fix this. I don't have to give advice. Just let it be. And it's taken me a while to get that, because that was also a pattern that I had in my childhood family, of fixing things. So it's hard, you really have to say, okay, this is my space, this is his space, respect his space.
Now I understand that you sometimes go to tapings of the show that your daughter does with her dad.
Every week.
Yeah, and so how does that work? Does that help keep the sense of family together, or is it just a
I mean,
kind of relationship? Or
I'll tell you, it is a week by week thing. you know, uh, this week was a good week. He actually was very nice to me and said some nice things about me, to the audience even. And some weeks he ignores me, and so I kind of I just go with the flow. I'm like, it's not, you can't try not, I guess you can't personalize that. It's know that they're going to have their little feelings about whatever, and you've got to realize that that's them, that's not you. So if he says a snarky remark about me, or he praises me. I mean, it's just where he is at that day,
Yeah.
and I'm not, um, I just kind of be me. I don't want to fall into any of those cliches of the ex-wife that controls or does this or does that, or I just kind of hang back. This is their show. I'm
Mhm.
not producing the show. I'm not involved in the show. When she asks me, I do give her a lot of advice.
Right.
The first season was really, really difficult. I was kind of I called it mom assist, but
Right.
basically she is doing a television show about her trauma with the person who caused her trauma in front of millions of people.
Right.
It's very, very difficult. And she was in Second City, Chicago. So
Mhm.
was also learning how to do a sitcom. So
Right.
she was really thrown in the deep end. So the first season I was around a lot as support for her. And I know he didn't like that, but she basically told him, "Hey, I need her here, so, knock it off."
Right. Right.
And I think she's gotten much more vocal with telling him her needs, and just kind of putting him in his place sometimes. She certainly puts me in my place
Right.
sometimes too.
And that's honestly what you want to see in your children is that
Yeah,
they've grown
yeah,
up, they become adults, they
yeah.
can start forming their own boundaries, and they can also direct other people in a way that suits them.
But I'm very proud of them. I mean, look, I love George. I will always love George.
Mhm.
Oh, he's the father of my child. I mean, hello. And to see him, I mean, he's so good in this show.
Yeah.
And to see the two of them, it's just it's wild. I mean, it's just I mean, I'm just so proud of both of them. It's great. And they're confronting a lot of things that are not easy. So I'm proud of them for that too.
Yeah. Now, for viewers who don't know a lot about your background, are you willing to share with us your decision to become the kidney donor for George?
Yeah, George popped his Achilles tendon, and he had the operation, and then the wound wasn't healing, and they were like, so they were doing this blood therapy, and he had to have much more tests, and it showed that his creatinine level was increased, and so we went to they said, we think you need to go to doctor, and this doctor comes in. He had the worst. Both my parents were doctors, so I'm very comfortable around doctors.
Yeah.
He puts George's charts up and he goes, "Mr. Lopez, you're sick. You're very, very sick. At 45, you're going to need a kidney transplant." And immediately out of my mouth, I said, "I'll give you mine."
Right.
And I just never, there was never any doubt in my mind that I would, that's my husband. I love him, of course. Now, the odds of us being a match were millions to one. So that was a really hard thing. But they do, okay, you can't just give a kidney. You have your own set of doctors and you have to go through psychological testing.
Right.
Two questions that I had not thought of. They said, what if the kidney doesn't take? What if you reject your kidney? And I was like, oh my God, I haven't even thought of that. And I said, well, at least we gave it the old college try. And then they said, well, what if you get a divorce? And I hadn't thought of that. And I said, well, it would hurt more, but ultimately, I'm giving someone the gift of life, and I'm giving my daughter's father back to her.
Yeah.
And that is, everybody after the divorce, say, you're going to get the kidney back. You're going to get the kidney back. And it's like,
Right.
that's silly. It's a gift. And that was the first thing I said to my divorce lawyer. I said, the kidney will never, ever be brought up in this divorce.
Yeah.
Because it was a gift. And, I'm very happy that, every year my daughter thanks me for having her father.
Yeah.
No matter what, when there's life, there's hope.
Mhm.
There's hope with a relationship, and so I always wanted, I've always felt that it's still one of the best things I've ever done in my life.
Right. Absolutely. Wow. What an amazing story.
It
Uh,
was amazing. I mean, we really I was so determined. It was so funny because I just knew. I almost felt like somebody else. I don't know. Who knows? I just had this feeling like I was the donor. And they were like, well, Mrs. Lopez, you don't understand, you have to go through this and go through this, and it has to be this test and this test. And every time I passed a test, the doctors would be like, okay, she passed another one, she passed another one. And it was like 6 million to one that we would be a match.
yeah.
So it was it was a pretty amazing thing.
Yeah.
And when he lived with it for 6 years, we kept it quiet for 6 years.
Mhm.
And when you see someone you love suffering like that, and then the next day, like literally the next day after the kidney transplant, his eyes had been yellow. His eyes were white, and he said he could taste food, and he felt good for the first time in like years.
Yeah.
So, it's a great thing. Yay, organ donation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've got the sticker on my driver's license.
Yeah.
But tell us more about you right now. What projects are you working on? What are some of your goals? What's making you happy these days?
Well, what makes me happy? Let's see. I just moved into a new house.
Mhm.
I finally sold mine's childhood house, which I had been wanting to sell it for a long time, and she really needed it. She needed that house,
Right.
and it was just very big for me, and it just, I just wanted to change, and so she finally got the show. She bought her own place. She's like, so I was like, okay, this is a good time, and
Yeah.
I actually got an offer out of the blue,
Mhm.
so I've been kind of putting my nest and making it, like, just decorating it completely different than my old house. I had a 1926 Spanish, and now I'm doing it very modern. So
Mhm.
I'm just kind of like, I'm like, hey, honey, let's make it colorful and fabulous.
Yeah.
And but I'm also a real estate investor, so that's something that I've always loved, real estate. And so I just bought a couple properties in Mexico, and I have rental properties kind of all over the place, and so that's takes up a lot of my time. And I'm also, in the process of producing a couple things I can't talk about, but I'm getting
Great.
back into the producing game, and yeah, it really makes me happy. And just, I think right now I'm ready to date, which is I wasn't ready for a long time. Although right after the divorce, I dated my celebrity crush,
Right. Wow.
which not many people get to do. I dated Michael Nori from
Good.
Flashdance. I was like, honey. Um, but yeah, so I'm really just it's a good time for me right now. I feel like my daughter is settled,
Mhm.
and I can go travel. I can go do the things that I want to do. I think for a long time, because this was such a difficult and public divorce, and she suffered so much, that I was really making sure she was okay. And now she is. So it's my time now.
Great. To wrap us up today,
Yes.
do you have final remarks? What would you like to say to those in our audience who are going through the breakup process right now? Something to give them hope that better days are down the line.
You know what? I will say that, first of all, my mantra during the divorce was, don't let them take your crown. My girlfriend had this painting, and it was this woman with a crown on, and all these hands were trying to take her crown. And I asked her if I could have it during the divorce. And I would look at it and just know, you are a queen. You have your crown, keep your crown intact, do what's best for you, lead with love, don't be vindictive, because your children are watching, but love yourself and allow yourself to flourish. Don't get stuck in a rut. Allow yourself to flourish.
Great advice. And, listen, I'm a former psychologist who works as a divorce lawyer, so
Ah,
I'm always looking for the positives that come out of divorce,
yes, yes.
that people can develop in themselves.
I feel great. You know what? I feel great. I feel great, and that's what I tell all my girlfriends. I'm like, you're gonna be so much happier when you get over the hump of the process of the divorce, which is it's hard. It's hard. But when you get to the other side, there is a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. You will be happy. You will be happier. You will.
Absolutely. Listen, thanks so much for being so candid.
Thank you so much for having me. This was
Being
great.
funny and entertaining through talking about a difficult process. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I know our viewers are going to love this episode.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks.